welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our hosts, Sri Rajgopalan, Peter V.S. Bond, and Brian Gildenberg, explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in an increasingly digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPG Guys.
Hello, folks, and welcome to this episode of the CPG Guys podcast, where we explore the omni-channel digital journey of brands and retailers. I'm, of course, your co-host, Sri, and I'm joined by none other than my dear friend and partner of the CPG Guys podcast. His name is synonymous with retail and learning. Brian Gildenberg, also the host of the Gildenberg Omni Comment on the CPG Guys every Thursday. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing well, Sri. How are you doing out there in sunny Los Angeles?
This season has not been sunny, so I'm not going to take credit for bringing the sunshine to LA, but last year was a different winter, and it's 49 and chilly here for us here in Southwest California. 49 is the deep freeze. And most of us are taking a trip down to Antarctica, so bucket list check, we'll never have to make that trip. So Thank you, Brian. Before we get to our guests, let me remind our audience to visit a browser. Go to cpgguys.com. You can find the links to our podcast and of course, all the major podcast platforms. If you're not already doing so, please follow us on LinkedIn, where we publish new content each and every day of the week, even on the weekend, 7 days a week. Of course, we have 20,000 plus followers. Thank you for that. Please also subscribe to other podcasts in our collective, including the FMCG Guys CPG Scoop and a newest edition from the man himself, Mr. Gildenberg, CPG Guys Fast Forward. And we're also proud to be sponsors of Next Up, formerly known as Network of Executive Women, whose mission is to advance all women in business and to promote gender equality in the workplace. We're giving out memberships to the organization. If your company is not a sponsor, please get in touch with us at contact@cpgguys.com. The digital liner notes of this episode will, of course, contain hyperlinks to our site, the other collective podcast sites I referred to, and our LinkedIn page and our landing page, of course, on Next Up site. So, Brian, are you ready to rumble?
I'm ready. I am ready indeed.
All right. I should have said that in a great voice, but y'all know I have a TV face and a radio face, not a radio voice. So, retail media.
I'm afraid that with a guy from the TV industry on, we don't want to do unlicensed content right out.
That's how I threw in the TV stuff in there. So, retail media is increasingly clearly being recognized as media. This means in due course, the marketing mix analysis of CPG brands is going to have retail media squarely in the middle of it. Then there's surround sound media, online, offline, offsite, static, and that's the theme of today. And we have none other than an esteemed guest here today who has experienced all of this in his own personal life as he built his career, who will help demystify this for us. Join us in welcoming to the show Bob Perry, who I've known over a decade. Director of Business Development at NBC Universal Media. I've known him since his days at Mywebgrocer. Prior to that, he comes with a rich experience in TV media at Voodoovox, CTV, and Univision, if I say it properly. Bob, I've been eagerly waiting for this one. Welcome to the show, Bob.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Bob, before we start the questions we've prepared for you, take 30 seconds to give us the high-level goal of your role. What exactly do you do as leading retail media for NBC Universal Media?
So I'm a director of business development for the owned and operated portion of NBC. And that allows me to represent the entire portfolio of NBC Universal, some of the digital assets of Comcast, who owns NBC Universal. I represent Peacock, our streaming product, Spot On, our OTT CTV product. We represent partnerships with Anzu, a gaming platform, and I have access to really put together some really phenomenal media solutions for my customers on the retail media side that drive into brand. And we use data to do that, and we have attribution on the back end, and it is really so fun to represent this product with the goal of, taking customers further, faster.
We'll include links to your LinkedIn profile, NBC Universal Media's LinkedIn page, and of course the website in the digital liner notes of this podcast episode. So I'm going to jump right in, Bob, and my first question for you is about your career itself. Your journey after Plymouth State has been in the TV media world, from Univision, as I mentioned, to Voodoovox, and then Mywebgrocer, where you spent quite a few years, and now NBC Universal Media. Take us through the years. How did that shape? And then what advice would you give for someone early in their career coming into this media space and building a career there?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Sri. After school, I actually started in local radio in Washington, D.C. And while I was down there, the owners of the radio stations that I worked for, they brought in consultants that were teaching us non-traditional revenue principles. So it was like a Chris Beck and a Morrison Abraham. And these companies, these consultants came in and they taught us about market development funds back then, which has evolved into shopper marketing and now retail media. They taught us about brand managers and category managers and core brands and non-core brands. They gave us a glossary of terms for retailers, from DSD to coffins to all of these great things that we could apply in the conversations in our narrative when we worked with brands. So that's where I really cut my teeth, and I really became enamored with the grocery and CPG and retail. And it was so apparent to me that because of the frequency of purchase of brand, it was something that they needed to have a voice pretty readily available on different mediums. So I took that training and I started to do in and out programs with Walmart around the Beltway with DSD. We would cobble it together. We group them together. We do radio schedules and time into sporting events and things like that. So it was really fun and really great experience. And then I made my way up to New York, and I worked for what became Clear Channel Radio at WKTU, and really kept the focus, and really my whole career, the focus on CPG and retailer. And it really has led me to, the Mywebgrocer after a few startups, but always applying what I learned and continue to learn. And then I brought that over to NBC, where we represent, top funnel opportunities and solutions to drive into retailer platform. We have attribution partners where we look at foot traffic. We triangulate back to sales. We work with the category managers to find out where the hurt spots are for brand. And we put media solutions together that include English and Spanish language and sports and streaming and OTT and some out-of-home partnership. It's really such a great portfolio of products. And I feel like sometimes a kid in a candy store, other times a mad scientist. But in the end, we come out with great solutions for our brands. Brands are happy, retailers are happy, and it return, it is a renewal business, and it is a return, wash, rinse, repeat, and then that recurring revenue and that Rundle model really works well. And it applies to not only grocery and CPG, but different classes of trade and kind of blueprinting those organizations. So that's what I've been doing. And from an advice standpoint, to someone coming into the media business, it really is a fun business. It's changed so much, as you know, through the years. But I think it's an eyes wide open opportunity. I think that there's curiosity that really needs to be applied here, and a lot of questions. And I have the opportunity to have a daughter who's in the media business, and we have really great conversations about different approaches and strategies. And it's really a learning experience for both of us. And in addition to that, I participate in the NBC mentoring program. This is my second year doing it. And to date, I've had 4 mentees, and it's really been a great experience. And I really hope that I've helped them.
That's awesome, Bob. And it's interesting because you've had you've had, by your description, which has been an unusual, varied, but in many ways straight media career, with the possible exception of a brief interlude where Sri and I both know you from, which is the Mywebgrocer days. So talk a little bit about Mywebgrocer and how that kind of fit into the journey. And it seems like you may have, I think we're over time, you were one of the people that was ahead of the game in terms of understanding how retail and media could come together. And I think that stop on your career journey is an interesting one. So talk a little about that.
Story of my life, Brian. Missed it by that much. Ahead of the curve.
You are a man out of time. That's a report.
Mywebgrocer was an amazing experience for me. It was at the time my dream job. Like I represented media and I was talking to brands and retailers and trying to work with them with my certain medium, right? But here, when I was at Mywebgrocer, it was specific to the retailer and the brand conversation. And, this is where I got into, this is where, Sri and I would look at control and exposed surveys from our Frito-Lay and our PepsiCo campaigns, and later on our J&J campaigns. We use loyalty card data to kind of targeting and measure. It was Mywebgrocer was a dedicated group of people that really, as you said, were ahead of their time. And this was back when, Walmart had Triad and Amazon was really just kind of getting traction in the retail media space. This is 12, 13 years ago. But the learnings that came out of that and how that shopper marketing and now retail media, that evolution of that and the attribution and the ROAS and the incrementality, like all of those things, just it continues to burn inside of me, right? It's a passion that I follow because I want to have success for my customers, right? And I want to drive that business to the retailer. And I'm so interested in the measurement because I want to know that I put my best foot forward and hit the grand slam.
I'm going to come back to the core space of media, and I'm going to surface this much higher than just retail media, right? And no better person to ask than someone who's actually spent time on the TV media side, but then has also done something like Mywebgrocer, which uniquely brings you into the CPG world as well. But my question comes back to media. How has media matured over the last 5 years, specifically for the grocery world?
The last 5 years, I'll even narrow it down to the last 3 years. It's been a rocket ship. I attribute that in good part to COVID. Grocery e-com platforms were crashing during the lockdown, providing virtual waiting rooms for shoppers. I think it gave retailers a chance to have a good look under the hood and give their platform a tune-up. Then in November 21, Amazon reports in their earnings call that they had revenues of $32 billion in retail media, 21 billion of that domestically. And I think the convergence of media and tech motivated every retailer to figure out a way to provide a much better customer experience when digitally transacting, as well as very curious in regards to monetizing the platform. Streaming and connected TV is a great media alternative for brand and retail. And I think CTV is a key driver for that retail media investment and the growth of that. I like the innovation in store too. I think Cooler Screens is a fun product. I like the reincarnation of QR codes at the shelf and on products, great touch points for consumer engagement. There's also great partnerships that are happening that involve media, Roku and Kroger and Walmart and Paramount. It's really just a great time, and the evolution of all these products and how it's moving so quickly is great. It keeps me motivated to get out of bed and do this business every day.
Yeah, and you were talking a little bit earlier about like what your role is at NBC Universal now, and talk a little bit more about how you bring together the different assets that you were talking about into sort of real surround sound campaigns. The individual assets themselves, of course, are interesting, but how are you guys thinking about how you stitch that together into sort of something that might be greater than the sum of its parts?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I said, you work for a radio company, you have 60-second, 30-second billboards and maybe some sponsorships to sell for a concert or something like that. And you work for a company like Voodoovox, where you have, you're selling an audio hook. It's kind of like an audio double click, right? So you're very confined. But at NBC, the portfolio is just ever expanding, right? The work that we do with NBC Local, NBC Network, Telemundo on the multicultural side, our Peacock and OTT, Sunday Night Football, the most highly rated program on NBC, is a great opportunity. But with all of those things, Brian, it's really kind of through the needs analysis with the client, what you want to put together, right? And I think that multi-platform approach, that omni-channel approach that we've kind of started to kind of step into with some third-party partnerships with out of home and screens in stores, and we're wrapping Lyfts and Ubers in some markets for some campaigns. And it really, the levers that we can pull through not only our portfolio, but for a third party to align with a company like NBC Universal and all those assets, it really is a fun time to kind of put those solutions together.
Let me remind our audience that we're speaking with Bob Perry, Director of Business Development at NBC Universal Media. So in a previous question that Brian asked you, we went through the 360 surround sound, but I would actually love to learn details of those very capabilities, and which really at the end of the day in media terms, we'd say is the possible inventory that one can get into from a brand perspective. And then can you link that back to what business problems in the CPG brand world they should connect with you for?
Sure. It's funny, for the almost 5 years that I've been at NBC, and NBC is probably legacy business is television, right? But the linear portion of the solutions that I put together are not as frequent as I put together on the digital side, right? So with the connected TV and being the sixth largest digital platform is ranked by ComScore, it gives us opportunity to kind of use not only our assets, but to use all the data that we've had from all the other owned assets, right? So from like Fandango, we own Fandango, right? So we have our theme parks, we have we have a golf booking system, we have purchase data, we have a commerce and a direct to scale department that we can actually run commerce and manage that transaction for advertisers. So there's really nothing that we can't do from a media standpoint. We talk about media in general and retail media, but I think this really leans itself more to the commerce media conversation, right? Like all roads lead to commerce. And at Shop Talk last year, the CEO of Publicis came out and said, we are commerce media. That's what we want to do. And that aligns perfectly with what I've been doing for the last decade plus. And NBC has all of those tools that helps us, provide that to our customers.
The follow-up piece of that, while I think I can deduce a lot of what you said and build it, I'd love to hear from you directly is when should a brand come to you uniquely at NBC Universal and say, hey, that's the right choice, let me reach out to them. They can put a 360 surround sound package. Are they inventory areas that are just doesn't exist in other places, or do you always take a 360 approach? Like what makes you different?
My approach to the business is always a 360 approach, right? As much as I can make that Omni 360 approach happen. A lot of time it depends on budget and target, right? The size of the audience. Sometimes we look at audiences that because of the targeting of that, the sample size becomes so small. So we have to kind of pivot a little bit, right? But I think a brand should come to us when they're ready, right? When they have kind of extinguished all other options. We do a lot of work with holding companies and agencies. Yeah, but when you have a conversation with a brand manager and it's linked to a category manager conversation, and you're using different buckets of money from channel marketing and the former shopper marketing dollars, and now these retail and commerce dollars that are coming down, and you can put a plan together, a multi-platform or an omni approach 360, where all roads lead to a landing page for conversion. That's where the rubber meets the road, and that's kind of where we ice the cake. And then when we bring in our attribution partners, whether it be a footfall attribution with Foursquare or Placed, we provide all that data, that post-campaign analysis, the reporting from the attribution partner, and we have a post-mortem on the campaign, and more people come into those meetings to hear the results. And then it gets socialized around the brand, and we start receiving more information and more requests for, can you do what you did for Walmart? Can you do what you did at AutoZone? Can you do at Rite Aid, Wakefern, Kroger? And it's, like I said, a wash, rinse, repeat, but the template for retail, no matter different class of trade, is pretty similar. And I think that the solutions depend on the goals and the targetability, the geos, et cetera. And you just have to be really flexible. And with that too, budgets are shifting, right? And I've always said to them, to from a budget standpoint, I won't work with you if I don't think the budget is there for me to provide some results for you. If it's too small of a budget, I would recommend, let's do a bundle. Let's pass the hat at the brand. Is there other portfolio like we used to do with PepsiCo, Quaker, and Frito, right? We'd put them all together. Our cold and cough programs that we used to do with J&J and Kroger. Like these are all great programs, but they start somewhere with a smaller conversation that you have to kind of put your best foot forward and your thinking cap on and say, what can we do? What can we create for you? And really that's where these successes come from.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And you started alluding to or talking about some of the retailer networks that you were thinking about. And if we could drill down on that for a second, like in terms of the specific RMN or retail media network one platform offering you guys are thinking about, what metrics and talk a little bit about the offer itself, obviously, but then also what are some of the measures that you're using to find success in that ecosystem? So I know right now that's, if not the biggest question we get asked all the time, it's one of the top 2 or 3, which is what are the best ways to measure success effectively in the retail media ecosystem specifically?
The best measurement that I go by is what my customers tell me, right? So when they come back and want to do another program, then there's some success there. I will tell you, and I under NDA I can't get specifics, but one of the first programs that I did when I came to NBC was a program with a non-brick and mortar retailer, right? And we took brand dollars and we drove to that online retailer. It was a 4-week program. And it was in 11 of our duopoly markets. It included English and Spanish and sports. We did all the creative in-house. We dotted all of our I's and crossed our T's and we put it out into the wild. A year and a half later, when we went down for one of our quarterly business reviews, we found out that within 2 weeks, that product had sold out on that retailer. And we still ran 2 weeks, they didn't pause it or anything. And that was really what led to the continued business and the renewal business with that brand. But then we expanded to different retailers outside that, more brick and mortar, more on the digital side. But the one platform specifically, it's just a great suite of products, right? There's really 4 pillars in there. There's a NBC Unified, which is really that data and identity portion, our activation and automation, the ad innovation, and then finally the measurement. And the measurement, like I said, the business that I do directly with the brand, and I do very little agency business. If I'm told to work with the agency or the agency needs to get involved, then I'm all about it, and we don't mind that at all. But our capabilities internally with we have a division called Sky Castle that handles all of the creative, all of the production, works a quick turnaround, works with style guides, and the brands are really happy. And the measurement that we get when we come back is really the incremental sales. And the programs that we do, that I've done personally, 20% year-on-year gain is the minimum that I've accomplished.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
Big
I'll
number.
take that.
That's a pretty big number. So speaking of measurement and metrics, I mean, for the longest time, retail media as it evolved, you refer to the last 3 years in particular, the measurement of success in this space has been ungoverned, which means it has been more like, in a previous episode, we discussed the term, the student grading their own homework in terms of what success is. But I love that you said right up top, let the brand tell me what their success metric is and let me focus on getting that done. But you are now part of a committee in the industry that's trying to bring about much needed RMN guidelines and standards. Can you share whatever you can about the committee. What are y'all focused on? What's the latest? When can we actually expect that something solid will emerge from the committee?
Sure. No, that's right. I've been on the Internet Advertising Board's Retail Media Network Committee since the spring. The committee consists of a collection of retailers, agency, holding companies, vendors, media, tech, brand, everyone. I think our largest meeting had 100 plus participants in it. I actually invited some of my customers to join from the retailer for their input and for some of the learnings. And it's really been great. We're in the final stages of completing the Retail Media Buyer's Guide, and the goal is an early April release. It's comprehensive. We cover a lot of material, a lot of great contributions from across the participants, which led to great conversations. All of you would have loved and enjoyed being part of that. So that will, like I said, early April is when we expect that to hit the streets.
Will that have a specific reference to metrics in the buyer's guide, like a set of guidelines?
There is measurement. There were 4 different components that made up this media buyer's guide. And it was interesting. In working with different retailers, I knew that they were different. But when we had the agency input, the actual buyers and the planners contribute and talk about the different platforms and what their requirements are and what their lead times are. It was really interesting. But so there was creative and planning, there was activation, there was measurement. It's very comprehensive.
This will be the last couple of questions because I'm gonna bundle pack 2 of them together into one. I think so. Just to get my quota in. I think the question I've got is really about the future, right? So in my job as the head of the Fast Forward podcast, what does if you fast forwarded a couple of years, what do you think this retail media network ecosystem looks like from your vantage point as, a collection of non-retail media assets and a whole bunch of other things? How do you see that world shifting? Because that's kind of a world that's shifting almost in parallel to yours. But I really do have a specific question because there's been a lot of conversation, and I personally think this is one of the most underrated developments that's happened in the last 12 months, is the continued integration between retail media networks and connected TV. Because the granularity of the data you can get in both of those ecosystems, I really think can be transformational for both of them. So any thoughts that you have on the connected TV ecosystem would be interesting in that fast forward context as well.
For sure. I love the product. I love I Spot On is our product, and we pair it with Peacock from a CTV streaming standpoint. And I contend that the growth in retail media, or I should say the growth in connected TV, is a derivative of retail media spend. I think connected TV is one of the greatest mediums that you can apply and align with a retail media network program. Our Spot On product, and not to sound too salesy, but we can target 210 DMAs down to the zip code. And a lot of the times what I'll work with is dropping a pin at a store location after getting the data back from the brand and the client. And I let that data kind of drive me. So we drop a pin at the store, and then we'll develop a trading radius depending on the geo, right? If it's Wisconsin, it's a 15 mile trading radius, right? But if it's the city, we look at a 5 mile trading radius.
If it's LA, you're not using 15 miles.
Yeah, we look at feet. So then we use that connected TV, and because of that product, because of our own content that we put on there, and the premium content that it is, along with other third-party content, it is it's billions and billions of impressions on a monthly basis that we're able to allocate to that effort, and it really works well. And then what I will also kind of bolt on to that from a multi-platform standpoint is I go back to display, right? That's where I started. I look at pre-roll, 15s and 30s. We have a full episode player. We have video on demand. It really, it's such a collection of phenomenal media products that I know people beat this saying into the ground, right? But I know half of my media works. I just don't know what half it is. So when you can put a multi-platform together and let the data drive you and use this innovation that is ad tech, right? That is CTV and OTT, and streaming on top of that, it really is a no lose, in my opinion, when done right. And I also think that creative drives a lot of that conversion and that messaging. And I think our team at Sky Castle and the team that I work with there internally, they have a great rapport with the brands, and they turn it around in a very timely fashion. It's something that brands don't usually expect, a 10-day, 15 business day turnaround from a creative standpoint. And the way that we really take the style guide and we just rip it apart and say, this is how we're going to do this, and this is how it's going to work, and this is our recommendation. And it really has been successful. And I owe a lot to the internal teams at NBC and the processes that are in place. It's different for me. I've not worked at a really large company like NBC for years. Clear Channel was probably the biggest radio, and it was local company standpoint, but it was local radio. So you're really on your own island a little bit. But NBC, it opens the door to so much opportunity, not only for our advertisers, but even for me personally, from a career standpoint.
So let me remind our audience that all of our content can be found by going to our website and typing cpgguys.com on the URL, where, of course, if you think you or your company has some thought leadership to contribute to a community discussion, you can drop us an email at contact@cpgguys.com, and you may be able to join us on this podcast just like Bob did. Don't forget to drop us a rating at cpgguys.com. On the top right navigation bar, there is a link for it. Thank you to our 20K plus followers on LinkedIn. You have helped shape the show, what topics we discussed, and made us probably the leading podcast in the CPG industry and retail focused on retail media. Bob, I want to thank you for joining us on the show today, and this episode in particular, our favorite topic, media and retail media.
It's been my pleasure. It's great seeing you guys. I look forward to connecting out at Shop Talk.
Mr. Gildenberg, thank you for joining me. If you can give us a summary of what we learned here today.
Well, my big summary is I'll be eyes wide open because I'll be at one of your theme park properties, Bob, in about 72 hours. So I'm very excited about that. From there, a couple of things. One, I love the early part of your career where you were talking about integrated media. Back in the radio days, right? People for those of you under 30 who are listening to this, go ask your parents what the radio was. But I love the idea that you were doing integrated campaigns even then, and I do think there's a bias from the digital side of the marketing world sometimes to think they've invented things that have been around for a long time, and an inability to learn from companies' experiences in building things like integrated large-scale campaigns and things that tie together different assets. Just because you can more digitally and granularly measure those things today doesn't mean that the company hasn't done them before. I do think there's a lot of muscle memory inside of your own company, sometimes as a brand owner or a retailer, and in your agency and content provider partners to know how to actually do this stuff. So I thought that was great. I love that you use the word curiosity as the driver for just about anything. I really do think it's the one success factor that can override everything else. If you continue to be curious, you're going to learn new stuff, and if you learn new stuff, that's great. I think I like the whole idea that you were implying, I think, throughout the whole thing, which is that I would imagine that if you had an Aladdin's lamp for the brands that you work with, and you could have one wish, it would just be to get them to think bigger, to be able to bring more holistic ideas to the table instead of trying to. And I do think that there is a worrying gravitational pull in the digital ecosystem sometimes to think smaller because of the way that digital media works and the comfort that people have with very granular ROAS calculations on relatively small things. And I think that it's going to be interesting to watch that tension play out between big things and small things. I love your comment about all roads lead to commerce, which clearly we could have paid you to say if you didn't say it, because it's a big part of.
I'll give you my vote.
A big part of what we do. And the whole notion of the customer-driven metrics and not trying to impose a set of metrics on people that come in, but also doing good work to get those measures more standardized to make the system efficient. And then the last piece, that last conversation we had around connected TV, I mean, I agreed with you to start with and agree with you now. I don't think the world has really thought through the implications of the massive shift to connected TV from a viewing point of view, and the massive bet that one of your, non-linear television competitors has made on an ad platform to save their narrative to Wall Street, and the sheer amount of conversation that will be going around advertising in the connected TV space over the next couple of years as critical mass starts to pick up there. I do think that retail media networks and the data they have and the clean room architecture you can use to bring those together is going to be a very, very powerful integrated marketing tool. So this was awesome. It was good to see you again, man. And thank you for the time. So
it's great seeing you. I look forward to catching up with you.
Yeah, indeed.
What theme park are you going to?
Universal Hollywood. So
make sure to write Dumbo the elephant. It goes 20 feet up in the air and is horror free. So
I'm pretty sure my kids are going to point out that they came to the park with Dumbo the elephant, so they don't need to ride it. So
that's a wrap for this episode of the CPG Guys. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Brian. Catch you soon on another episode to come by very shortly.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.